Hello there, this is Rom Wills coming back at you with yet another video. The power of a high social IQ. The power of a high social IQ. What do I mean? You're very intelligent in dealing with social dynamics. You can read them well, you can navigate them well. That's a certain intelligence to that, being able to navigate socially. Because let's be real. One of the biggest issues that many men have in this thing of ours called game, or if you don't like that term, male-female relationships, sexual dynamics, however you want to deal with it, just men and women dealing with each other. Their biggest problem is they just don't know how. They don't have the level of social skills needed. Indeed, this is even if the men would be considered physically handsome by women. Their problem, their biggest issue is actually talking to the women. And then part of social is reading the women. One of the biggest mistakes that's made in these spaces is that men will treat all women the same. And indeed, even saying something like that, they'll say, no, they're all the same. First of all, you haven't met all 4 billion women in the world. 2, anybody with a high social IQ knows there are so many factors that affect how the woman's going to behave. There are so many factors, any particular woman. And in fact, if you know these factors, which is a social thing, you got a leg up. Now, people who follow me more closely know I got some webinars that I've done on reading women. And I've actually had other people do webinars on reading women. And the one thing we all have in common is we recognize all of them not going to be the same. But to even have that skill, you got to have a high social IQ. You got to know how to interact with people, how to read people, so you have an idea. And there's so many tales. Like I've said several times before, when you're looking at a woman, you can't just look at that female who got, the nice breasts and big old butt, pretty face. You got to look at everything. You got to try to ascertain, okay, what's her social class? Shout out Master Teacher BGS for his Octane model. That's about the woman's social class, because they're going to behave according to wherever they think their class is. Not even so much what their actual class is, but what they think it is. There's different, and anybody who's dealt with social classes know there's different levels of behavior. There is not one competent sociologist, or heck, a social worker, who will dispute that. Notice I said a competent sociologist, a degree sociologist would not dispute that. They'll add more into it. But they're going to behave according to their social class. There's going to be different levels of social behavior according to whatever their religion is. Anybody who's dealt with women, any man who's dealt with women of different religious backgrounds or even different denominations can tell you, oh, there's a big difference. There's a big difference between a Christian woman and her behavior and a Muslim woman, and then a Jewish woman, or then a woman who's following Ifa, or who might be a Buddhist. There's going to be a difference in their behavior because that's affecting it. Educational levels, that's part of class, but educational levels. What region of the country they in. Anybody who's traveled, or a region of the world, there's a big deal about passport bros and everything. They'll tell you, oh, the women in this region behaves differently from the women in this region. I mean, it's there. But that's part of social IQ to see all of that. And indeed, if you have a high one, you can read the situation or have a general idea how someone's going to even behave. Now, that's really social IQ. And then be able to interact with them. Because understand, when you're interacting with someone, a big thing that helps you is knowing who you're dealing with. Like people who know me personally, see me interact in the real world, they'll say, hey, you'll talk one way when you're on these videos, but then your behavior when you're out here in the streets with us is totally different. That's a social IQ thing. I'm speaking in a way where the greatest number of people can get what I'm saying. The greatest number, everybody isn't. Once again, that's a social thing too. But then when I'm in different environments, I'm My social IQ is looking at them and say, okay, I gotta go hard. I gotta do that murder walk in this environment. Okay, in this one I can chill out more. I gotta be a little bougie in this environment, or I gotta look like I'll snatch somebody's heart in this environment. But that's the understanding. You gotta read the situation and everything. You gotta read the person. And it's powerful because it gives you an advantage in dealing with people and navigating. Understand something. When you out here in the world, you interacting with people. Indeed, when we talk about relationships, everything is a relationship. If you're going to get coffee or something at some coffee shop, that's a brief relationship, just interacting with a sales clerk. You know, when you buying some clothes, that's a brief interaction. You know, you're always interacting. Those are brief relationships. Now with social IQ, high social IQ, you know how to interact with them to get what you would like. Indeed, one example of even a job that involves high social IQ is salesman. The best sales people, I'll be correct. The best salespeople can read a potential client socially, because anybody who's really gotten into sales know, basically you're not even selling a product. Let me say that again. You're not really selling a product. You're looking for that connection. You are looking for that connection. People are paying for the connection, not so much the product, because they can get that product probably any place. Shoot, these days they can order that product online. They don't have to interact with you at all. If someone comes into a store, or I have experience doing sales at 3 gyms. I was doing sales. They could have went any place. The thing was, I would just make that connection. But then in order to make that connection, I had to do that sales thing, right? Like I know there was this white guy who was a salesman at one of those gyms. And he was one of those white guys he's basically a blue-eyed brother. And I remember this sister, that I knew very well, went to a gym he was doing sales at. And she said she peeped how his speech intonation kind of changed up when she started talking. She peeped it. It was like, social thing, you know? She joined the gym, but that was high social IQ on his part. See, that's the power of it. Now, how do you develop it? Because somebody always say, well, how do I develop it? You got to be social. It takes practice. You can't read a book and do it. In fact, the worst thing to do is read a book and do it. You got to experience it. You have to pay attention. I can read women very well because I just paid attention. I've learned very few things out of a book. You know, at most the book would just confirm what I already would see personally. But after you interact, you see this, I pay attention, boom. And the beauty of it is it's dynamic. It never stops. You never stop learning. And I love situations where I see something new. It's like, oh, okay, okay. All right, let me put it in the memory bank. And then when I see it again, I was like, do. In fact, I had an ex-girlfriend. She said, yeah, Ron, when you get that look, your computer's working. I was like, yeah. She had a high enough social IQ to read me that well. So I'm gonna tell you what, it's a powerful thing. And if you want to seriously develop it, you got to be social. You got to get out. You got to pay attention. You got to talk to people. And it's not going to happen overnight. I'm going to be real. Yeah, you got some people. I think there's some books out there that say, hey, how to do this or that. But the best teacher is experience. Because the nature of social interactions is dynamic. And quite frankly, you can get some similar instances when you're dealing with people, but every single instance is a different person, so you're going to get something different. You know, no matter how many things might be in common, no matter what the patterns are. There's always a little nuance no matter what. But you got to practice it, all right? So anyway, that's all I have for now. I'll get back with y'all later. Peace and blessings.